Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning into the Fitness Experiment podcast. Jesse and I have two special guests for you today. We have Will and Dalton joining us from the PTCOFFEECAST. So Will and Dalton both attended physiotherapy school at Western University in London. They have since moved on and are now practicing on their own. They'll tell you a little bit about their individual experiences, the individual clinics that they're now working in. But while doing so, they continue to be busy entrepreneurs. Like I said, podcasting. We're going to link to their podcast, link to their Instagram. That is important because before we jump in, I want to tell you guys that Will and Dalton are a part of an awesome cause right now. They're raising money for the 24 Hours of Heroes. So if you're from London and area, you've maybe heard of this event. It's for an awesome cause, raising money for Fallen Heroes Canada. We're going to post a link in the show notes to their Instagram account where you can make a donation if you like. And we encourage you to do so. As a thank you to Will and Dalton, Jesse and I made a donation to them. Their Instagram account is the Movement PTs at the MVMT PTs. So that's the same thing, just spelling it out for you. So I think you guys are going to really dig this episode. We talked to them about their experiences with individual clients, the biggest challenges, how they deal with injuries. Another thing that many people do not think of when it comes to rehabilitation is, what is your mindset? Are you motivated to recover, or are you kind of down in the dumps, feeling sorry for yourself? This is another very interesting point that we get into. And again, they share their many experiences with this. So we think you guys are going to really love this podcast too. We're having some awesome guests on lately. We have more to come. So please continue to give us feedback. Comments, give us a review if you can. That really helps bump up our ratings, get this out there to more people, and also just motivates Jesse and I to continue to put this content out there for you. So enjoy this episode. I know you're going to dig it. We've recorded this on a Sunday, and we really thank Will and Dalton for joining us. So we're sitting here with Will and Dalton, PTCOFFEECAST guys, fellow Londoners, actually, fellow London podcasters. First of all, thanks a lot for joining us, guys. Taking time out of your Sunday for joining us too. We appreciate that. So before we put you guys on the spot and kind of probe a little bit more about your background, how you got started into all of this, tell us about I know you guys are big coffee drinkers. So what's your go-to? Press, blend, medium roast?
Kick it off, man.
I personally like drinking espresso and then kind of like diluting it with a little bit of water.
No!
The old Americano.
Yeah, exactly. But, I use I think Dalton's probably the same, but I use an AeroPress to press my coffee.
Nice.
I've used that since I was in university, starting undergrad. So, I mean, I've used other methods and stuff, and I do gavel. I don't discriminate, but that for me is like the way I do it.
I like it.
Yeah, I'm on board with that. Will introduced me to the AeroPress, so I've been AeroPressing my coffee since I met Will. Definitely my favorite. I'm more of a light roast guy. Dark roast, not a big fan of. In terms of fast coffee, I guess I'll rock the Tim Hortons, man. Like a true Canadian boy.
It's fair. I like
I've been for fast coffee, I've been drinking McDonald's.
It's not bad.
It's okay. Yeah, it's all right.
I usually tell people I prefer that over the Tim Hortons is the Dons, but yeah, whatever. I'm a press guy as well.
Nice. Jesse's got the Starbucks rocking right now, so
yeah, this is 1018.
Yeah.
Oh,
1018.
Yeah, okay. They got treble cock at 1018.
Yeah. Yeah.
Treble coffee. So funny story about that is that was actually the first coffee that we ever drank on the PTCOFFEECAST.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's funny.
Running it back.
Running it back.
You guys sell your own now, right?
We do, yeah. Yeah, we do. We sell our own. The original blend. It's a nice cup of coffee. We got roasted here in London, actually, so which is cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
Who does that for you guys?
Patrick's Beans. I don't know if you guys heard of him.
Nope.
He roasts his own beans as well. So he roasts our beans, but we connected with Paul, who's through Workshop Cold Brew. I don't know if you guys tried his cold brew.
So good.
It's at Commonwealth and stuff. He's the one that kind of put us in contact, and we've been kind of working together since then.
Nice.
So,
That's wicked.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Cool. So tell us, you guys, it'd be interesting to hear kind of your individual backgrounds first. So both Will, Dalton, kind of how you got started in the PT field in general in the first place, and then how you really got into podcasting. And I mean, if you guys check out their socials, like you guys have some big numbers, right, in a short amount of time. So it'd be cool to hear about kind of how you guys got started and then how that really started to boom and grow.
Cool. Will, you want to give them your background first?
You go first.
Okay. All right. So we'll run it back. I'm from Harrow, Ontario, which is a real small town outside of Windsor. Did my undergrad at the University of Windsor in kinesiology. Played a bunch of different sports growing up, like hockey, baseball, basketball. Then kind of fell in love with football, like leading into high school. Played a little bit past high school in the OFC, which is the Ontario Football Conference. So I played for the AKO Fratman. London Beefeaters is like the local team here in London.
I've heard of them.
Yeah. So played in that league for a little while, hung up the cleats, retired. And then I ended up in London because I did my master's in physical therapy at Western. So did 2 years there. That's where I met Will. That's when we started our social media. So we started an Instagram page and then eventually our podcast. What kind of led me into the road of physio? I mean, I think at first it was always when you go into kin, most people are I'm just going to do physio because you don't really know what else to do. And I played sports. I was I want to I was hurt. I've had physios before, so I kind of want to do that. And then it slowly started to grow into a bigger opportunity to kind of pursue the things that I love, which was educating, training, and working out, and then helping people get back to doing what they love, whether it be an athlete or whether it be just someone on the street that likes training or, the recreational person, all in between. And then that's kind of what continued to push me down this path. So, and here we are.
I like it.
I went to Brock University in St. Catharines for 4 years, took kin. There I played baseball growing up, so I played varsity baseball for 4 years there. Then went to Western for PT with Dalton. Obviously the same story there, right? Why I got into PT probably, it's interesting. I think I always joke it's one of those things where you kind of end up there. It's not something I necessarily thought about doing from when I was young or anything like that, but I knew I liked being active. I knew I liked, playing sports and training. And I knew that I enjoyed coaching people and, being a leader and that kind of thing. And so it all kind of blended together. And physio, like Dalton said, is kind of the logical next step. And then I kind of realized once I got to university that it actually blended a lot of my interests together, and you can kind of make it what you want. So that's sort of the story there.
Yeah, cool. That's actually a question that I had when I was thinking when we found out that we were going to have you guys on, is that a lot of times, I don't know why this happens, but sometimes if I'm talking to, I know, athletes in our gym or something like that, and I have something going on with, I don't know, X, name it, a shoulder or something. I was well, have you seen a physio yet? And they're well, I don't really know where to start. How do I pick? Because I don't think all PTs are created equal, just like everything else. There's really good and that really care about it, and some otherwise, potentially. I don't know.
Sure.
But do you guys have any recommendations for the listeners as to how to go about choosing a PT?
Yeah, I mean, that's like I'll go first, Will, and then you can kind of add on if you want. But I think that's a good question, and I think that's a challenging thing that we deal with in today, because like you were saying, like anything, I mean, whether you're in the strength world, whether you're in chiropractic world, whether you're in massage, whatever it is, there's going to be good people, there's going to be bad people, there's going to be people that take different approaches. I think the most important thing is like know who, like what you want and what your goals are, and then go out and go out and do some like research, like go talk to someone, go to a clinic and ask, hey, can I talk to the physio, or is there a consult where I could do like a free 15-minute consult with you, like to figure it out and see if they align with your goals. Like if they have a background, let's say it's someone from here, like they have a background in training, they understand like, some of the CrossFit movements like that you guys do here, or just functional movements in general, they understand loading, they understand all this kind of stuff, then yeah, maybe that person's like the right person for you. But if you walk in and they have no idea what a push press is or what a back squat like looks like, I probably wouldn't go there for that reason. Another thing would be is if you go to any healthcare professional and they just are taking things away from you, like don't do this anymore, don't do this anymore, don't do this anymore, I would get away from that right away. That would be my thought.
Sweet.
Yeah, like Dalton said, honestly, having a good relationship with your therapist and having somebody that resonates with you is the most important thing. And it's okay to shop a couple different places to try to find that. Like if you go to one place, and most people offer consults, where you can just go and talk to them and kind of meet them. And it's not like a formal assessment, and it's free. So you can go and just see who, is going to most match like your style and that sort of thing. That's kind of what I would do. There are some platforms like there's one platform that me and Dalton are a little bit involved with called Clinical Athlete. And it's like a network of providers who, if you're part of the program, like by nature, you are keeping up to date with like performance related physio research and training research and stuff like that. So if you're in like the CrossFit community or just like a fitness community, then you can look for those providers and see if there are any in your area. I don't know if there are tons of them around London, but
I don't think there is any in London.
That's one kind of avenue that's hopefully going to grow and stuff, and kind of help people with finding the right physio.
Right.
Yeah. Another thing, and I just want to say, because I heard you guys talk about it on one of your podcasts before, and I thought it was great, is like, not everyone's going to be the right match, right? Like you guys talked about it with training. I think it was you, Jesse, that was talking about like sometimes I do a screening where I'll have people come in and like if they're not appropriate or they're not like a good match for me as a provider, like you're like, I'm gonna pass on it. Maybe you're not ready at this moment in time, right? It's the same thing with like physio in the sense, like if you're going out to find someone, if they're not a right match for you, like don't hang around, right? Like don't stick around and just be like, well, maybe this will get better. Like take your health somewhere else. Like you're in control of that. And that's one thing that I hope we get across to people on our podcast and just in general is like, take control of it. If it's not working out, cut your losses and just go and find someone. Don't give up on like physio because you had one bad experience. Right.
Yeah. Cool. That's awesome.
So you guys both kind of already hit on this in your explanation there. Just the idea of like, you mentioned strength training in particular, but also CrossFit specifically. And I think that brings up a good point. And we've talked about this on some of our podcasts before as well, is this idea that you go to another practitioner, whether it be your family physician or whoever, you have an injury, again, could be anything, could be shoulder, could be rest. Usually their recommendation we know is ultimately just rest more often than not. And I know, Jesse, you've mentioned this like specifically before, is when you had your elbow injury, you were told by someone to something like don't lift any more than 5 pounds, kind of just like very general blanket statement like that. So I guess my question to you guys is like, how often do you, like, this is probably a massive challenge, I imagine, for you guys, is you get these people who come in, they've had these other recommendations from someone who's kind of like telling them the exact opposite to what you will tell them. And I'm just kind of wondering, like, how do you get that message across to them, I guess, and how do you kind of gain their trust right from the onset to deal with something like that?
Oh man, that's you're definitely right about that. I think that's one of the hardest things to deal with, and I think it kind of does come back. You mentioned trust, like right from the get go, and like from a physio standpoint, I think healthcare in general, like trust is something that's super important, and is usually not established on the first day that you meet somebody. So from our perspective, like we can't step on the toes of other professionals, even if we disagree with what they're saying, especially because that's likely to turn somebody away from seeing us. So like our first priority is to like keep people, because we're hoping we can, show them that they can continue forward without completely resting. Right. So trying to I think my personal approach is like, I usually try to show them through experience, rather than just telling them everything. Like, and a lot of that can be just through like your assessment techniques, like, oh, check it out. Like you can actually handle more force than 5 pounds, and that sort of thing. Right. So it's like implicit learning rather than like me just telling them I disagree with what another professional said. That's kind of my thoughts on that. What do you think, Dalton?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's the number one battle we face, on a day-to-day basis, right? Because, to be honest, most people, let's say they access like a doctor for first care, like primary access. Even though physio is primary access, like you can walk off the street and see a physio without getting a doctor referral. Like most people will go see their doctor first. And oftentimes doctors, just given the healthcare system, like it's fast, it's quick, 5 minutes.
Yes.
They look at you, they move you a couple ways. Oh, that's like a rotator cuff tendinopathy or tendinitis or tennis elbow, right? Just throw terms out there, which, it is what it is. And then it comes to us and like we have to try to navigate that. I would say Will did a really good job of explaining it. And I think what I try to do is just like meet that person where they're at that moment. And like, maybe on the first day, I'm not going to be like, you can lift way more than 5 pounds. We might let's just feel it out, right? Like I'll do an assessment, see where they're at, where's their head at with things. If they're like dead set on the fact that they can't lift 5 pounds, then I'm probably not going to push that right away and like lose them, and find some way over the course of like care, like how can we prove to this person like, hey, you can lift more than 5 pounds, right? Because like most likely throughout their day, that person is putting more force through their arm doing something that's going to be way more than 5 pounds. But, people don't think about that, right? You go to a healthcare professional and they immediately say, don't lift more than 5 pounds. Well, then you're like, well, I probably shouldn't lift more than 5 pounds, right? So it's kind of like meet them where they're at, feel it out, and then go from there. I mean, sometimes you can meet someone on the first day and completely they'll be down to be like, yeah, I don't believe that. It's like trying to figure out what they think. I would be like, well, what do you think? Like, do you think you can lift more than 5 pounds? Yeah. Most people will be like, well, logically, yeah, probably, right? Well, okay, let's talk about how we can get there, right? Like how we can do things to get you back to what you want to do.
Cool. Yeah, that's something that I noticed in your podcast. It was like early, I think, right away. You guys started talking about the human factor, or like the human effect. Like you aren't dealing with just like the pathology or the specific injury. Like you're dealing with human beings. So I was kind of curious about what your personal approach is of like overcoming some sort of communication barrier, or because I know for me, even when I went to physio, even though I wasn't trying to be, I was a little bit standoffish. I was like almost not being confrontational, but I was waiting for them to say something maybe that I didn't want to. And this is like from a long time ago. I think it was like 7 or 8 years ago is the experience that I'm talking about. So thankfully I'm not the same person that I was 7 or 8 years ago, but I was going into it and I was like such like a bullhead. I was like, oh, what? I'm just going to go right back. I'm going back to my sport. Like there's no way I'm going to sit out. So I was just waiting for them to tell me, oh, you need to rest. And then so I could like come back. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that was my shortcoming. But how do you deal with like bullheaded me from 7 or 8 years ago?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the hardest part, like you're saying, you are dealing with the human. Like, I don't know, my approach with that would be like coming into it. And that's why I think the initial assessment and just the meeting, a conversation between us two is like such an important thing. Cause I could feel that out. Like if we were talking and I could be like, hey, you know, hey, like Jesse, what do you like to do? Well, I like to train. I like to do CrossFit. Like I'm a higher level athlete. Like, okay, now these things are popping in my head. And then you're like, and I could feel those vibes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I probably would feel those things out, see where you're at, and then take that information and then react my way. Like, so if I could feel those vibes, I probably wouldn't be like, don't train. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I wouldn't take that away from you right away. Like we would kind of work through it and see like, you know, what can we come to on like an agreement together, right? Like what's going to be a common ground. And then, you know, if we can't figure it out on that day, like maybe we can try over time. Like it's a balance. And then again, we talked about it. Maybe it's not the right time even for you to have physio right now. Like, are you ready to go through that process? You know, right? Because like if you're not ready to go through that process because you don't really, you know, you're bullheaded and you don't want to do it, well then maybe it's not the right time for you. Like maybe continue to do what you're doing, and if it gets worse, then maybe you'll realize, okay, maybe I need to like be open to like what's going to happen, right?
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, totally. I think Dalton hit a lot of like really good points, you know, like you definitely like you're mentioning that human piece, and like that's something that we're both really interested in, is like dealing with different types of people, you know. And when someone's coming at you like really intense and maybe they're looking for a specific answer, I don't even know if I would specifically address it at that point. I'd probably try to like spin the conversation in a completely different direction, and probably in a way that's like, I'm taking an interest in your sport and like what it is you do. Like I can't remember what it was that you said that you were doing at that point. Which sport was it?
At that time, it was in CrossFit. Yeah, really early. I was very fresh and new to CrossFit and not good at all, but thought I was. Yeah.
But like that's where I would go with the conversation. You know, like I just start asking you about CrossFit. I've done CrossFit, so I would talk a little bit about it. Try to just relate to you, and so that you know that I care about what you're doing, and like I care about getting you back to doing that consistently, you know, at the level you want to be doing it at. And so there you're establishing trust, and now it's like you know that my goal is the same as yours. Right. Yeah. Before I might say, hey, maybe we need to just back off a little bit, but you don't need to stop completely, you know? And here's how we're going to get you to full function.
Right.
You know, so it's rather than just shutting you down, it's like we're making sure that we both know what we're after.
Cool.
Right.
Yeah. Then the goal for both sides is the same thing. Yeah, exactly. I like that a lot. Yeah.
And then sometimes it doesn't work. Like sometimes you just
like anything, right?
Sometimes you fail. Like sometimes you struggle and you don't connect with someone, or you know they leave with a bad experience. Like that happens more often than not. And like
totally,
it's like for us, it's just a learning experience. Like I'll try to I mean, I've only been out a year of like physio practice, right? So I'm still like a baby in the profession. But like what I'll try to do if like I lose someone is like take a reflection on it, like what could have went better on my part, you know, like instead of just immediately being like, well, that person wasn't committed or they didn't have buy-in. It's like, maybe, right. But like, what did I do that I could maybe have done better to like relate or communicate or show the full plan of care, or, you know, make sure that they felt like what they were getting out of the sessions were valuable, you know? So there's always times where you can learn and be better. Right.
Yeah. I'm happy you guys brought up the human factor thing, because I think I've had a really interesting experience with that personally in the past several months, I would say. So like some of our listeners will be kind of familiar with this, so I won't kind of beat a dead horse, or however the saying goes. But so I've been working with the PT for the last several months online. He'll write my workouts as well. So I started this because I had a pretty bad back injury, like, I don't know, 5-6 months ago. And it was kind of trending in the right direction, but it was something that I've had issues with it before in the past. And I was like, you know what, like I need to stop kind of messing around with this. Let's kind of just dig deep on this and really figure this out. So point being here is that like early on, so there'd be times when, you know, whatever, maybe he writes a workout for me, and towards the end of that workout, the back starts to like tighten up a little bit. Maybe some of the pain comes back, and like initially kind of previous me, that happens. before I was working with someone like that, in my head, it would be something like, oh no, here we go again. Like the injury's coming back, it's getting worse. I don't think that exercise I just went through to finish my workout was the right thing. And then it's like this crazy snowball effect where it's just like, I mean, call it what you want, but it's what it is like you don't have confidence in the movements that you're doing. And I can't even explain to you like how massive it's been for me, not only from, psychological perspective, but rehabilitative perspective, everything, like how massive it's been to basically like have the confidence when you tell that individual, tell that physiotherapist, this is what happened at the end of the session. And then they go, well, actually, like, that's not a big deal. I was kind of like testing you. If that comes up, it's not a big deal. Like, it's okay to feel pain every once in a while, and then I think that's the feedback you guys are talking about. And like I said, I can't even tell you like how massive I personally have found that to be, is having confidence in the movements. And then you can just kind of commit to those 100%. And so I'm assuming that's kind of what you guys are hitting at there is, and I think that's something that maybe an outsider who's never necessarily experienced a lot of PT probably doesn't appreciate that side of things. And I know I hadn't really before either, but that's, I can fully attest to that now. For sure.
Yeah. Shout out to your physio. I think I know. Is it Doc Mills? Like
it is, yeah.
Guy's a beauty.
It was so random. I just kind of shot him a message one day.
Yes.
And,
yeah. I mean, what you said right there is like so important, right? Like here's a movement that like obviously is important to you. Like you enjoy CrossFit training, whatever it may be. It's been bothering you for a long time. You're having trouble doing it. You have pain. Like our immediate thought is like, well, I'm doing way more harm to myself. Like it's going downhill. But just having that reinforcement that like, no, this is normal. Like you're okay. You're not going to do any more harm to yourself. Like maybe you're having a response, but that's a normal response. It sends you away from going down that like catastrophizing like side of things, which is like kind of what you're talking about. And the funny thing is like what we know about some pain research is like that those things make it even more your pain even more like present, right? Like avoidance, fear, catastrophize, like all of those things influence your pain and discomfort, which can then even make things worse, right? So it's like it's cool that you experience that, because I think it's important for people to go through it, because they don't really realize you don't think until you go through it. And like you're saying, like people who haven't maybe experienced physio might have not had that before. The thing that me and Will are trying to get across is like we need more physios to take on that mindset, because unfortunately sometimes you'll go into like other physio like clinics and some people that don't really think about that in that way, and they could like go complete opposite on you and be like, no, you shouldn't be deadlifting, it's bad for your back, it's bad for this, and like think about what that would then do to you, right? So like that's why I think that's amazing, and like shout out to Doc Mills PT.
Yeah.
So you guys find like if you were to go the route of like taking things away from people, you kind of steer people more towards that like fear pattern, and then that would kind of cause them to snowball into a pattern of more pain? Or
like I would say, like when I say taking away, it's like there's times maybe where it would be like, okay, you probably shouldn't, maybe we should back off deadlifting for now. You know what I mean? Like, can we load you in a different way? Like, can we still train and load? And like, maybe you're not doing a barbell deadlift. Maybe you're doing a trap bar deadlift, or maybe you're doing a kettlebell. Like maybe you scale way back and maybe we take a break from deadlifting altogether. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of how I would say taking away, instead of just immediately being like, no, you should not be deadlifting. It's bad for your back. You shouldn't be doing it anymore. And like, I've heard it before even before I started physio, you know what I mean? And like, I'm sure, I don't know how much experience you guys have had, but like that happens way more than we'd like it to happen. Right. And then people are like, well, deadlifting's bad for my back. Now they're scared. Now they don't want to do it. So they stop doing it, which means now they're not training anymore. And then they'll be like, well, maybe I'll go back and try to do it. Like in a couple months, you go back and try to do it. And then it still hurts and it's harder because you haven't been doing it. You know what I mean? Then it gets in that vicious cycle of like fear of the movement, you know?
Yeah, totally. I mean, like, that's why we're, like, trying to be as aware as possible as, like, how our language and our words can influence, like, somebody's actual behavior and actual, like, psychological and physiological responses to, like, what we're saying, right? Like, it can make a bigger impact than you think. And unfortunately, like, the reality is that like negative influences tend to be more impactful than like positive influences.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you're always trying to err on the side of positively spinning things. Even if you are like maybe taking a little bit away, you're trying not to frame it that way. It's challenging, but like I think that would be like the goal for us, you know, is to keep people thinking positively about their bodies and about their prospects for the future and their ability to like overcome their experience that they're having.
Right. Yeah, that's cool. Because I mean, there's two different ends of that spectrum as well. There's like myself 7-8 years ago, the bullheaded person who's going to just kind of continue to try to do the things that are causing them pain because they're just not being intelligent. And then on the opposite side, I find that there's some people that if you say, let's just take a little bit of a break from this and that, then that's kind of what they wanted. So then they just continue to become more sedentary and less active and kind of like go in a little bit of a protective shell, just, you know, like a germaphobe almost, like they're afraid to hurt themselves. So it's cool. And I really, really dig how you guys put such a big emphasis on that very first interaction and just like feeling it out as to who this person sitting across from you is so that you can make sure you're not hitting those pain points for them and then causing them to, you know, withdraw from your care. Because if, you know, like allowing them to actually work with you and you discover together how that person is going to get from where they're at now to where they want to be again. So that's really awesome. I like that a lot.
Yeah, totally. It's interesting. You kind of like, without even maybe knowing it, you kind of touched on like a couple like key types of people like that me and Dalton would try to kind of like identify is like, are you typically like an avoidance coper or like, are you typically like a persistence coper? Like, are you someone who tends to push through maybe a little too much, or are you somebody who tends to, you know, avoid having any sort of discomfort, right? So it's interesting that you kind of pointed that out, but that's a big thing about just sort of identifying like maybe what the barriers are for those types of people.
Yeah, cool.
So we were talking earlier about kind of that connection from other practitioners and then feeding into you guys. So just made me think, like, again, we've talked a little bit about this before, but we definitely don't have that firsthand experience like you guys have. So I'm curious, what are some major, because we know there's some obvious problems with the healthcare system, right? Just the way I was going to say how they're connected, but more so it's how they are not connected whatsoever. Like, it's the lack of connection and communication from what it looks like anyways. So I'm curious, like, do you foresee any changes to that? Do you think there should be any major changes to that?
Yeah.
I got cut off for a bit. I'm just going to clarify the question. I think, were you asking about like connecting between other healthcare professionals? Yeah,
essentially. It just seems like it's really lacking, like the communication, the sharing of the information, the working together.
Yeah. I mean, go ahead, Will. Go ahead.
Well, I think it's hard because like there's a lot of like legal aspects to it too. Like you have to, you know, there's protection of information and stuff like that, like confidentiality and stuff, which makes it difficult to just like be really open and transparent. Although like usually you're in like a circle of care, like at that point, but it's just difficult to like have a seamless transmission of information because there's so many like different schedules and like a lot of like doctors are so busy. It's not like I can like hop on a call and talk to them about a client. You know what I mean? But I think where it can get better is it has to come from like the local level. You know, it has to come from like people starting like clinics and practices and engaging with other you know, like healthcare practices and getting to know them on a personal level. And so you have a community that's aware of like maybe the strengths and weaknesses among those different like businesses and stuff. I think it has to really come from the ground up, you know, with people who are really actually invested in like collaborating with other teams and stuff like that. And probably with like fitness groups as well, you know?
Yeah, I would agree. I think there's obviously some barriers with like just the insurance model, right? Like most people access physiotherapy through their insurance. Insurance, you know, like I said before, physio's primary access, so you can go get it, but a lot of insurance companies require a doctor's note. So some people have to go to a doctor's note, which means sometimes they'll get that crappy interaction at times where they get a crappy label. And then insurance model doesn't offer a lot of like insurance. Sometimes people don't have a lot of insurance money. So like I think that in of itself is a big problem, but I mean, I don't know how to solve that. I personally think it's probably going to change at some point soon. And we're going to see a different way of how we consume healthcare. I think more people are leaning towards actually seeing the benefits of health. And I think like, you know, companies and different like I said, companies are seeing this, and maybe they'll give more money towards health that can then go off to be used for physiotherapy, fitness, etc. But like with what Will said, I think it starts from the ground up with these conversations, right? Like, you know, can we get together as a community and establish like relationships where we're on the same page? So you guys, you know, you're the more in tune with strength and conditioning and programming and loading principles as probably majority of like physios are, unless they're learning on their own, because like we don't learn that in school, right? So you guys could be collaborating together, like whether it's like teaching seminars, or whether it's like, you know, I see someone in the clinic with like a hip issue that I'm like, okay, you're good. We can't load you anymore here with most of like the equipment that we have, like because physio clinics unfortunately don't have access like a squat rack and stuff. Our clinic does, but it's changing, right? But if it doesn't, it's like, what? I'll send them to Jesse and let Jesse make a program for them, right? And then vice versa. Like you have someone that you're working with where, you know, you're trying to manage load or figure things out, but you can't really, you know, get a grasp on it. Then you refer out to like a physiotherapist that you know is going to be activity focused, focus on getting them back to the gym as soon as they can, etc. And then that way you have a good reciprocal relationship. And that's where I think the most success can happen, because now that person feels like safe, that like we know each other, we know expectations of each other. They know coming to me that they can trust that I'm going to try to get them back to the gym as soon as they can. I know sending them to you guys that like you're going to treat them appropriately, narratives will be on point, like those kind of things. Like I think that's where the biggest power can start to have impact on people. Yeah,
cool. Speaking from like the experience of like a coach on the floor, especially in a group class setting, there'll be people, maybe they're seeing a physiotherapist, and it's like the telephone game, right? Like since I don't have a connection with you guys directly, like with the PT themselves, the person comes into the class and they're like, oh yeah, I saw my PT and they said like, I can't really do this, but I can kind of do that. And like, I'm not supposed to deadlift, but I don't remember why. And I'm like, okay. Let's try and see like, where's your then like I start asking questions and try to like jar their memory a little bit. But, it's definitely a lot easier, when I have the connection. Like some people that I work with online work with, Dr. CJ DePalma from Florida. He's with WOD Prep, one of their coaches. Yeah. So when I have that connection, it's like, it's so easy because I can talk to them and then I'm like, okay, CJ, this is what they said and it doesn't make any sense to me. So can you make this like make sense to me so that I understand? And then that's a lot easier. But that's not always the case. Do you guys like have advice for coaches on the floor to be like, if somebody comes in with a description like I just had, like what do they do?
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, I can speak a little bit firsthand because I also like coach too, right? And like that's like the most like frustrating thing is when someone will come up to you and like that'll be what will go down, and you're just like, oh man, what am I supposed to say in 5 seconds when I got 10 other people that are here trying to train, right? So it's like, I think the best advice I would give is like, again, being like on like having a physiotherapist that you have a good relationship with, like you're saying with the guy online, and like that you send your people to, and that they come to you with, right? And like just trying the best to like have that relationship, so then you know that most likely that person will come to you, and they'll get a description of like, hey, you need to do this, this, and this, and you'll understand it, instead of it being just like, well, don't like move your arm a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. The hardest part is like if you don't have that connection, like you're saying, it's like you kind of just do your best to navigate it, right? Like I would say, you know, like everything, it's like see what gives them trouble and try to modify it based off what gives them trouble, right? Like if pressing directly overhead is something that they have like a problem with, maybe we scale to a landmine press, maybe we scale to like a floor press. Like, well, how can we load them in a different way and still have them participate in class without over aggravating, right? Like that's probably the best thing you could do. It's tough. That's a tough challenge.
Yeah, because you don't want to do any more harm. That's the biggest thing. It's like you still want them. And then the narrative is also the difficult part as well, because I don't want to say something dumb and make them lose confidence in me. And then you definitely don't want to step on any toes, because I have no idea what the context of the conversation was with your PT. So it's like, it's almost, and then you don't want to completely avoid something, because then the avoidance thing comes into the picture. So yeah, just, I guess, do what they can where they are, I guess.
Yeah. That would be my best advice. And then again, like just, I think this is even more of a reason to have like the collaboration of like physiotherapists and strength coaches in the same setting. Like
that's what it comes down to.
You know what I mean? Like it, and I think we're getting there. Like it's big in more popular in the States, where you have like physios in a box, right? Yeah, or in a strength and conditioning gym. I think it's getting more popular over here, but I think we just need to do a better job of it, right? Like if you have a physiotherapist that's in the box and knows the programming and knows what's going on and knows how you guys word things and what your programming looks like, it's so much easier for me as a physio to be like, okay, today's WOD is this. Yeah. All right, here's what you're doing. Okay, here's your program. You can go to class, but here's what you're going to focus on. Focus on these things. Like that way, one, they're still getting like rehab and training. Two, they're still participating in the community environment, which I think is super powerful for like rehab in general, right? And like those things are huge.
Yeah, I think Dalton pretty much addressed everything. One thing, like, because I don't actually coach right now, so like it's hard. I feel like that would be a hard position to be in. You could, like, I know as a physio, it's awesome when like, and this is me because I don't mind this, but like most physios would be all right if you like actually sent some questions. You know, like if you like wrote a couple questions, like, hey, this is what we do. I'm wondering what's the plan with so-and-so, and like what maybe are some variations that like we could incorporate, because then they actually, you're kind of getting the link together there, you know? Yeah. And as long as they're cool with it, they'll just be like, oh yeah, like this is kind of the plan. This is what I would recommend in general. Because like they're going to assume you know some stuff. Like if they're like, oh, like focus on more hip dominant exercises, or like slow down the tempo a little bit more, or something like that, then that would probably help at least give you some more confidence and guidance. Like it's just a matter of like, do you have the time to actually do that, you know, when your day is super busy?
Yeah. I like that. I'm going to start doing that. Yeah. Solution to the problem right there.
I like that.
Yeah. Because that, to me, that solves the whole problem for me. Like in that moment and in that specific class, and until they can see their PT, I'll have to do what you said, Dalton. But having the direct response from that's the answer for me. So yeah, problem solved. Thanks, man.
Totally. And I have had a couple people do that, like actually bring me their like program and be like, oh, these are like the 3 exercises I'm having trouble with. Then like you don't have the time in your classes to like take them through different like variations and find out exactly where their load tolerance is and stuff like that. So like a physio can do that and be like, hey, this is what I found. Like, you know, try doing like a assisted goblet squat instead of like a full goblet squat, something like that, you know?
Right.
Then you know right away.
Yeah, cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. I think that's that model you talked about that seems to be a little bit more popular in the States, where you have your box and then everyone's kind of all there in one location. I agree. That would be the perfect world if we could have more of those pop up, I think, because they do seem to be, it's just so fluid. Like you said, like the way you explained, you know, this is today's WOD, this is how you kind of scale that, do this variation. Yeah. So
yeah, especially in this environment, right? Like in like what you guys do, right? Like I think it's so important. And then like I think even if outside of this, like just physiotherapists in general, I think we need to just start learning more about the basics of strength training and just the movements and exercise and how we implement them and all that kind of stuff for people that are just, you know, going through daily workouts. Like even if they're just working out on their own, right? Instead of like, as much as like, I mean, everyone kind of knows the classic like external rotation banded drill, right? Which is like good in context, but there's way more that we should be doing for people if they need to get back to snatching 225 pounds over their head. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right on. I had a question about just pain in general, because I feel like every individual is a little bit different in what they feel like a pain response for a specific movement or something completely varies, right? There's people that you could run over their foot with a truck and they're going to be like, well, I'm okay. It just kind of hurts to walk a little bit. And then there's people that, you know, maybe they stub their toe and then they're not wanting to do anything for 4 weeks because they get a little bit of a sensation in their toe when they're walking. So how do you help like patients or clients that come in and see you guys, how do you help them understand and like define the pain that they're in?
That's probably the hardest part of our job, I think.
Yeah.
You know, because there's so many misconceptions about pain. And like by its nature, it's an experience, you know, it's individual. And it doesn't mean the same thing for every person, you know, so probably like, and this is like, I can't stress this enough. Like, this is not something that's ever perfect, you know, but I think at the like fundamental level, like what, you know, physios who try to understand pain are going to try to do with someone is like understand what their meaning is for their pain and then take them from there, right? You're trying to help them understand it in a way, in context, that helps explain their situation and that helps them move forward. You know, and that sounds a lot easier than it is, I think.
Yeah, that sounds simple, but I'm sure it's not that easy.
Yeah, and it's challenging because, like Will said, it is an experience, and each person's experience with pain and injury is so vastly different than another person. And like you're saying, like meaning, like there's so many factors that play into it, like meaning of like, let's just say you're working out, like if we're taking away like something that means a lot to you, then that might be more painful like for a certain movement than someone else who that it's not meaningful to them to like work out, right? So it's like it's so there's a lot of like different factors I think that influence it that we're starting to realize that's not just one-to-one correlation of like tissue damage and pain. Like we're beyond, like we've started to realize that like the, you know, just because you have pain doesn't mean that you have tissue damage, right? And there's people that have tissue damage that have no pain. So it's like, all right, well, okay, now what, right? Like what's influencing that? Well, you know, is it meaningful to you? Are you super stressed? Are you fearful of a movement now? Or, you know, is that like, there's so many other things. Are you sleeping well? Like those all influence your pain experience. So it's so much more than just like one simple answer, which makes it hard, like on our end, right? To like explain it. Cause like there's so much uncertainty in it. And even like one thing that I struggle with is like trying to communicate that to people because it's hard. Like it's not easy. And like, it's something I'm learning every day is like, okay, how can I best help this person understand why they're experiencing this pain and how we can kind of navigate around it. It's tough, man. It's
kind of crazy how like, I mean, really like the whole healthcare system is kind of developed around the idea of like pain. Right. But then I haven't dug into the actual neurophysiological mechanisms of pain in a long time. I used to dabble a little bit when I was still in grad school, but I just remember, and this is why I haven't looked in so long, is because it's just so like you guys said, it's just not well understood at all. It's so individualistic. you have like your gait. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Like pharmacological agents can affect it. Like they can desensitize these pathways and on and on and on. And it's so confusing to me.
Yeah, it's challenging.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is you can never know for certainty what's causing your pain, because there's so many influencers, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And like that's where like when we're trying to help someone with a model, it is a model, right? It's not like a fact. You're just trying to figure out something that helps that individual person like move in a positive, like in a good direction, right? Because like we can sit here and explain your pain this way, but that might not make sense to you, right? So even if it were right, it's like it's not really that beneficial. So yeah, pain's like insanely complicated, right? And so that's where like you just have to be wary of people who are claiming that it's not, and who are claiming that it's like your one technical like thing in your squat is like the sole reason for your pain, something like that. Like if that's the case, it's maybe be a little skeptical.
Well, look at CBD right now, right? Like that's probably the most popular supplement, if you can call it a supplement, on the market right now, and it's because it's just seems to be so effective for blocking the pain, right? That everyone wants to get rid of.
Yeah. And why?
Oh yeah.
Why does it happen, right? Like
Yeah.
we might know a little bit. It's like there's so many things that can influence it, and like the research is like, still coming out. Like we don't, it's hard to tell, but it is. I mean, it's helping people. So which is good. I think with pain, it's like your narratives always have to be on point, and you can't just be like, well, okay, I'm going to give you this one manip, or I'm going to give you this one ultrasound, or I'm going to give you this one thing, and that's going to take your pain away. Like we know that like this is influencing it in some way, but it might not be the way we once thought it was influencing it. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's I think a lot of people just associate pain with injury, and then absence of pain meaning that they're completely healthy. It's not that black and white. It's so fluid and
and pain is normal. Like pain is a normal thing in life. Like it's probably telling you that you need to maybe just evaluate what you're doing, how you're doing in it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like most of the times, and I'm sure you guys see this in CrossFit all the time, and like in anything with high intensity training is like, it's usually a load management problem, like most of the time, right? Yeah. It's like you're going way too hard, too often, you're not recovering, your body is like, yo, you need to chill, but you don't chill, and then your body's going to respond by giving you pain, tightening up, having some pull or strain of a muscle, and then you're like, okay, I'm gonna stop now, right? And then you respond to it. It's usually like, not always, I don't want to like label it, but like oftentimes in this setting is like a big thing that you'll see, right? And like I've been there before, you're like, well, I just want to go train, so like I'm just gonna keep going, right? So,
and outside stressors influence that as well.
Right?
Like that also counts towards like your overall load management.
Right.
Like you're sleeping, your accumulated fatigue, financial stress, like. Even people telling you like, oh, you should stop training, like all that stuff like counts, But it's cool. Like once again, like you identify probably one of the biggest things. Like if we can all start to get a little more on that same wavelength of like tissue damage, like so I injured something versus like something's is sore or something's painful versus like it's damaged. Like that distinction is probably like fundamentally one of the biggest points that can change somebody's, like you mentioned earlier, how much this influenced the way you approach your training, right? And I think it comes like that's like one of the biggest things. It's just like tissue damage doesn't necessarily equal pain, and vice versa. So like even just that is so huge, I think. And that's one thing we definitely do know.
So this is kind of like a specific question I just thought of when you said tissue damage doesn't always equal pain, but is there tissue in certain areas of the body that take longer to recover than others? Like for example, like if you have a back injury, say 6 months ago, you guys are probably, of a timeline, say, where you would expect that tissue to heal by, and thus if they're still like avoiding things and being in pain many months down the road, when no, that tissue is healed by now. Like, do you ever use that kind of like, does it vary based on body part, I guess is what I'm saying?
I mean, it can, right? It can vary based on body part, but again, like, it's totally individual, right? And it depends on a lot of factors, like how bad the tissue damage actually was, if there was any. Like, certainly it takes longer for something to heal. That's something that's more injured, right? The other thing is, again, like attaching the meaning to the body part. Like, we tend to see it being more difficult with people who actually are more, like, have a more skilled or more meaning to that specific location. Like, for example, like a piano player is going to attach a lot of meaning and importance to their hand, and there's going to be a lot of like sensory representation in their brain towards that area, right? So you could see maybe that would factor into like them if they had a hand injury.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I wouldn't expect that to be the easiest situation for them.
Right.
Yeah.
With the back, it's like, what's the difference between like the back and another body part? The difference is usually you can't see the injury. It's like, what is it? Why am I having back pain, right? Versus like bruising your finger or something, you can see it. Like, you understand it better. I think that's like where often back pain is one of those really tricky ones, because you don't know what it is.
And there's a big societal like stigma around it too, right?
Definitely.
Like if you ever have anything going on with your back, it's game over, right?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, like, we know that majority of people that actually get back pain and have it addressed will get better. And the majority of time when it's actually like very sinister is like 1% of the time, right?
Yeah.
So it's like there's just a big like stigma around it, right? Which makes it even worse, especially in the community of exercising and strength conditioning and CrossFit and whatnot.
Yeah. Because how many people's grandmas are like, "Oh, be careful, don't hurt
man.
your back."
Oh,
right?
for sure. Yeah.
Tell them that you're weightlifting, or tell them that you're
for sure
deadlift. Oh, watch your back. Oh, that's
exactly.
Be careful with your knees.
When like how to make sure that your back doesn't get injured. Train your back.
Yeah.
Right.
Deadlift. Pick something up from the floor. You know what I mean? It's like, it's getting better, man. Like it's frustrating, right? Like at times, but it is improving, and I think like the development of just our understanding of it, like as what we know is getting better, the collaboration, communication between physiotherapists, strength coaches, and the access to this information I'm very positive that it's getting better. Right. And I see younger people come through the door of my clinic that I'll see that actually get it. Like they grasp these concepts, and that's a positive thing for sure.
Yeah, the back pain is a big stigma thing. Do you guys have a hard time detaching sometimes? Like, for instance, you're at Sobeys getting groceries, you're coming out to the car and you see someone kind of reaching into their back seat, humped back, like perfectly rounded over, grabbing something. Maybe it's like a baby seat or something out of the back seat, and you just know full well, like, they're doing that day in, day out, even when they're picking up heavy loads, and you just cringe. Like, do you have a hard time kind of getting that stuff out of your head on a daily basis?
Well, like for me, I'm like, all right, like here's the thing. It's like, does that mean you're going to have back pain? No. Yeah. Does that person have back pain? Maybe not. Like, are they adapted to that? Have they been day in and day out lifting like that, like a suboptimal load to where they're building tolerance in that position to where they're adapted to that? They can round their back and pick up like their baby and be totally fine.
True. Yeah. I guess it's like, just a bunch of Jefferson curls, right?
Right. It's like the adaptability, right? And it comes back to the load management. It's like oftentimes when you see people get injured, it's like they're probably creeping up on their low tolerance, and that's when they have injuries, right? Like if you probably had someone do a gradual, I mean, I don't know if like anyone's ever done this, but like a gradual progressive program of like rounded back deadlifts, like in like safe loads, probably be okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Is it most optimal? Like if you're like, who knows? Like some will say maybe it is more optimal to round your back a little bit when you're lifting heavy loads, like especially like power lifters and stuff. But like, you know, is it more optimal to try to be in the best position possible? Sure. Like I'm not going to go to someone who's deadlifting at the gym and be like, and they're totally rounded over and be like, you should probably pull like that. You know, like I probably wouldn't do that. But again, I wouldn't demonize it completely at times, right? Like it's like depending on the level of the person, right? Are they new to this training? Then if they're new and they're working at like lower loads, like I'm not going to probably overemphasize it. I'll try to give them cues to be as good as possible, but I'm not going to be like, nope, no deadlift, back off, can't do it, you're around your back type thing, right? So it's like, it's a balance, man. It's tough.
It's definitely hard to detach though, like maybe just from a different perspective. It's like, because everybody talks about this stuff, you know, and everybody's got their like opinions and beliefs, and like me and Dalton know like how like kind of negative beliefs and stuff can influence people. And so like you're talking with like your family, people you don't want to tick off, you know, and like one of the biggest things, if you look into like changing beliefs and you look into the research in that area, basically it's really hard. You know? So like, and you risk really like turning someone against you, you know. So
like cognitive
like,
dissonance.
You kind of have to keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
Yeah.
Like you just don't say anything, and you're like hearing all these crazy negative beliefs, and like people being like, oh, like an older person should never strength train or something.
Right.
And in your mind, you're like, actually, that probably reduce their chance of dying.
That's kind of the whole goal.
Yeah, very true.
That's good.
So just have a couple beers and then maybe blurt something like that out every once in a while.
Yeah. You gotta be careful.
Yeah.
Start lecturing your aunt.
Yeah. And it comes back to meeting people where they're at. Like, are they ready to hear that? Are you going to blow up their beliefs right away? Probably not. You know what I mean? Like, slowly plant seeds over time is like probably your best bet with some of that stuff.
Dalton fashions himself as like a bit of a gardener on the side. You know? Always planting seeds.
I like it.
So I mean, Chad and I kind of talk about in our podcast a little bit why we decided to go ahead with podcasting, and it kind of, for us, it was basically just we wanted to increase the amount of people that we could connect with. We're talking about like the connections between PTs and coaches and PTs and MDs and stuff like that. And I mean, for us now, we have a connection with PTs that we feel comfortable referring people to. Whereas if we didn't do this podcast, we might have crossed paths, but probably not. So it's like kind of, we're trying to bring the local community together. And then also we're not really that good at talking to people. So and like you said, it's like when you're coaching a class, you don't really have time to explain the ins and outs and the intricacies of why you're doing what you're doing. It's really quick, and then you got to go over there, and just like you guys, you have patients coming in, you got a next patient on the next half hour, an hour, however you set up your appointment. So that was kind of our thing. I was just wondering why you guys started your podcast. Like, what you guys started the Instagram account first, and then you went to the podcast. Like, what started that whole journey for you guys?
So we started back when we were in our second year of physio school. We started our Instagram page first. I think we started it out of like, we wanted something fun to do and a little bit of frustration. I think initially we started our Instagram page because we wanted to put more like strength and conditioning exercise type stuff out, because we weren't getting a lot of that in school. So we were kind of just putting out some cool stuff. We followed some other people on Instagram that we liked. And then it kind of stemmed into like a big connection opportunity with people, right? So like that, we always listen to podcasts. So we're like, me and Will would sit down over coffee and rant about whatever, right? And we're like, hey, like, why don't we just have a podcast. Like, one, it'd be cool. Like, it's fun. It's a good opportunity to learn how to verbalize and talk and get better at that. And like, we can use it as an excuse to try and get some cool people to come on and talk to us. And like, we would play the student card often. We'd be like, oh, we're just students. Like, come on, come talk to us. And so then it kind of just developed into that, and we really enjoyed it, and people like seemed to like it and follow it. And it just kept being a good connecting opportunity for us that we're like, man, we got to keep doing this. Like, we're talking to people across like the US, some people in like UK, like Australia, like we're connecting with all these different people and having these conversations. We're like, this is great for us, and hopefully people are taking value away from it. And it's just continued to be that for us.
Totally similar to you guys, you know, like
yeah.
Sounds like
I feel like that's the cool thing about podcasting is like just allows you to connect with even beyond like the people you're actually meeting on the podcast, like because so many other people hear it, you know, you can also talk to those people if they reach out, and it's like you're realizing like maybe some of these thoughts you're having are similar to other people, or maybe other people can offer you like a different spin on things, you know? So from that perspective, it's like such a cool way to get to connect to people you otherwise may not have an opportunity to, you know?
Yeah. And you're like one connection away from like, who knows what.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, we're one connection away from having your own coffee. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, who knows who you're going to meet or talk to or, you know, connect with that's going to allow you to not only like level up your own like learning and stuff, but maybe offer you a new whole opportunity that could impact your career, right? Like, you never know what's going to happen. Yeah. Which is the cool part.
That's cool. And it's so incredibly easy. You can do it on your phone now if you want to.
Yeah, it's so easy. Yeah.
So I guess probably last question, what's next for you guys in terms of practicing, podcast?
It's the money question, man. Everyone.
If you're
go ahead, Will. Let them know what we got.
Well, I don't know. I think a big thing is like we're gonna focus a lot on the podcasting side of things. You know, I think in the future, like an idea for us would be to not only have our podcast, which is like very like you know, more global, like just a lot of physio students listen to it, a lot of, you know, physios from around wherever, like we'd also kind of like to reach more local and stuff. So maybe that's a direction that we'll kind of go. But yeah, we're always just thinking of the next ways that we can help people stay strong, you know?
Yeah, I don't think we really have anything like big coming up. Like, I think we really like the podcast medium, so we're going to keep doing that. We've kind of stepped away from Instagram content. Like, we used to post a lot of videos and exercise videos and stuff. We've kind of backed off that a little bit because it's like we're trying to figure out like what do we really want to get across like on our platform. Like, there's a lot of people that are putting out that kind of stuff, and like, not that we don't enjoy it and like to talk about it. We're just kind of trying to think, how can we make it like most beneficial for the people that are consuming our content? And we're kind of still trying to figure that out. And I think we're just busy with like work and trying to, you know, whatever, all that kind of stuff to like really focus exactly how we want to get that across. So we're kind of just going to go with the podcast and continue, you know, having fun with that and see where life takes us, man.
Yeah. Good.
And you got what, like almost 90 episods? Right now?
Yeah, we got over 100 actually. 100
over 100?
101.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
ridiculous.
awesome.
It's crazy. It's fun, and it's fun to go back and like listen to your old podcast, man.
So you guys do that, eh? We've like refused to so far.
I did that the other day, like recently, and I'm just like, ooh. But it's what's cool is like it's always there, right? Like I'll go back and listen to some episodes with some cool like some people that we've had on, and I'll be like, man, this is really good. Like, there's a good piece of information here that, like, I go back and, like, reminds me of, like, something that I haven't thought about. So the cool thing is, like, you can see your growth, like, in your learning as well. Like, I'll go back and be like, wow, I can't believe, like, I thought this way, and now I'm thinking a different way, right? Yeah. So it's a good reflective thing as well. So it's been fun.
Cool.
Yeah, it should be cringy.
Yeah.
If it wasn't, that would mean you're the same as you were.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Totally. So can you guys share your socials with everyone so they can check out your stuff? Socials, the podcast.
Yeah. If you guys want to check us out on social media, you can follow us at the MVMTPTs on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We're most active on Instagram. Our podcast, if you search it on iTunes, it's the PTCOFFEECAST. If you like it, if you ever listen to it, we'd really appreciate you to like subscribe to it, leave us a review. It just helps us kind of move up the charts, grow, reach more people. You guys should also go and subscribe and like and leave a comment on the Fitness Experiment. Yeah, check them out.
Cool. Now we don't have to say.
And if you want to Instagram is probably the best place to reach us. Hit us up on the DM on Instagram.
We'll throw that in the show notes too. So
Yeah, we will.
Yeah,
perfect for people to find.
Cool. And thanks a lot for zooming in, Will.
Oh, anytime, guys. That was really fun. You have a lot of good questions, and it's cool to see where your thought process is too. I wish I could be in the flesh with you guys so we could maybe crush a workout or something after, but I'll have to try to make it down. And maybe you guys could show me a thing or two about some Olympic lifts.
That'd be fun. It's a big training day.
Hell yeah. Cool. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. We appreciate you joining us on your Sunday. We'll have to do it again sometime for sure.
For sure. Thanks, guys.
Cool.
Cheers, for sure, yeah.